all the enhancements that they've made to the discovery layer. And he will be available not only to show, but also to answer your questions. So let's see. Ben, I'm handing it over to you. And you should now be in charge of the monitor and also of the audio.
Excellent. So I'm guessing that everybody can see my monitor right now, which has a picture of a steampunk air pirate ship. Great timing. And a list of the enhancements that the University of Hartford has been working on independently to put into our discovery layer. Thanks, Sierra. So let me start off. I've got 12, right? So that's kind of a lot. We've got about an hour. I am happy to answer any questions, but we have to sort of be mindful of the time. Okay, so let's start. The first one on the list is the normalization of special characters in the header search bar. So I'm going to bring up, let's see, I'm going to bring up the Waldo sandbox, and this one is on the same release that all of our sandboxes are right now. And I am going to bring up our sandbox, excuse me, our production. So what I'm going to do, let me go into the Waldo. Sorry, I accidentally got muted there. I'm going to do a search. Let's do twist and heart. Narrow things down a little bit. So the first one on the list here is Oliver Twist, Whole Heart and Soul. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this URL. This is something that we found a lot of our users doing, which is copying the citations that we've seen within our own catalog or within, say, Amazon. And when we do that, we've got these special characters like colons and backslashes and all these other nifty things that we put into our cataloging records. Unfortunately, including any of those would break a search. And I'm going to do that real quick right here. I'm going to replace these words with the words that I have copied from the actual search and then hit go. And as you can see, we've gotten all the results. So, which is, you know, okay, your search results are in there someplace. I'm going to do the same search here in Hartford's catalog. Hit go. And we find that we got these two searches. What happened is that even though this search bar looks the same as the one in you know, out of the box Bibliovation, it's actually completely rewritten. It's actually using a form that, and behind the scenes, there's something called a regex, or which is short for regular expressions, which goes and looks at the words that are there when you hit enter, and any anomaly that it finds, any use of a colon or a slash, especially if it's surrounded by spaces, gets pulled out, and then the search is done. So what you've actually searched on are the words that are in there: Oliver Twist, Whole Heart and Soul, rather than Oliver Twist, colon, Whole Heart and Soul. All right. Well, thanks, Anne. We have also rewritten our course reserves page. Again, I'll flip back to what's out of the box. Here it is. We've got functionality for sorting. And when you click on something, we find something with a couple of hits on it here. Oh, okay, cool. When you click on something, you get this modal that pops up. And then you can pick on, Memento, that's a great movie. I'm going to click on that one. Underneath the box is where the bibliographic record launches, right? And the idea is that now you can move back to this, and you can go to another option. And this is pretty good. We weren't really wild about this box, so what we decided to do is skip it. So let me show you what we've got. You click on course reserves. Again, all the course reserves load here. And let's do, and I can still do sorting by department. So let me pick something that's got some, let's do Italian Renaissance. So rather than getting a pop-up, what happens is you get an accordion and the page focuses on that. So the rest of the stuff sort of fades out, so you're not really seeing it. And you get these lists. Now, what we've done, instead of having a modal that floats over the top of the window, is simply when you click on something, I'm going to do Renaissance Florence here, it's opened up another tab. So basically, it's just pushed it to another browser window. That way, you can flip back to your original search. It's all right there. You can pick on something else. That opens in a second tab. Okay. You can still do, you know, all the sorting works. The same thing about filtering courses, which we loved, is absolutely fantastic. Okay, I want to see what else is Chris Grant teaching. Well, Ken is doing some stuff. Chris, that's the only one that she's doing. But anyway, so you can still filter and whatnot, which is really handy. I want to also take this opportunity to point out number 3 on our list, which is web page title. That was a thing that was hard for me to sort of like write up to really describe, but it's definitely easy for you to see. So let me go back over to our Waldo version. And here I am, I'm looking at Postman always rings twice. And if I go up to this top, see the tab says Waldo Production Sandbox details for Postman always rings twice. What we've done here is we've moved the bibliographic information to the first thing in the tab. So I can see right here, oh, there's the Italian Renaissance reader, ta-da, and here's the Renaissance Florence as well. And if you float over it, it does give some of the information. If you know, you can continue on with the ... and we'll give you some of the shorter titles. You can see it also says University of Hartford, but we wanted our students to know that this is a tab that has their information in it, rather than pushing the idea of this is University of Hartford, this is the library. We think we're important, maybe just not quite that important. Well, we are. Anyways, so let me go back to the list and see where we are. All right, so normalization, course reserves, web page title, custom fields. So this, I'm going to cover 4 and 5 at about the same time, because although one does the search results list and the other one does the bibliographic details page, they're both using the same kind of information, and they're using it the same kind of way. Well, talk. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to go back to my search. Let's do twist heart. There. We'll also do that over here. Twist heart. All right. So on both screens, we've got my favorite test record, which is Oliver Twist, Whole Heart and Soul. And on this display, you can see all the item information in addition to very brief bibliographic information, right? And so one of the things is that you can see that it's checked out. Hang on a second. Okay. You can see that it is checked out and due. You've got the due date on it. Over on this, where I've also checked out the same copy, you can't see any item information at all. So what we've done is we've used a combination of the JavaScript information that's provided by LibLime and the API information, which is also pushed out by LibLime, and use that to populate the pages. Now, in order to do that, we had to strip out just about all of the existing information. So when you're looking at this search results page, you can see the boxes, you can see you know, where the cover title goes and the little tables for the item information. Some of that we've retained. Most of what's within those boxes has been suppressed and supplanted with the information that we've supplied. I'm going to show you also the information that we have on the bib details page. So right up at the top, this item is not currently available. The mapping feature I'll show a little bit later But you can see where we've got, the way that we wanted the title to display, the items, we've got the highlight of the author, the subjects, and then down closer to the bottom, we've got ISBN and notes information and whatnot. Over on this side, it's not too terribly different, but we have formatted it the way that we really wanted it to look. And I'm not just, look beyond the colors and the way that the indents are and the fonts and whatnot, and look instead at where the information displays. We have the ability to move that wherever we want. So we took a look at it and moved some things up and down. We've done a little, I'm not going to get too deeply into it, but we've also done a little bit of conditional formatting. So if you're looking at a music record, because the emphasis is going to be a little bit more important on some areas of those bibliographic records, we've moved some of that up towards the top, made it a little bit cleaner, a little bit easier to find. All right, back to the list. Ding. We've got a question. Anne says, it's really important to have holdings info on the results list. Saves time for the reference librarians and the students. We agree. We've actually found that an awful lot of our students never make it past this page, right? So we're looking at the search results page. We found often that students will go this far, find what they want, and then use that, or try to use that information to go and get the book, see if it's available, see what else is available. So we wanted to give as much upfront as we possibly could. So one other thing that you can see on this page is, and I'll go back on this page too. There we go. All right. So up here at the top, you can see we're displaying 7 out of 7 results. Okay, this is not the best set of results in order to show this with, so I'm going to change the search a little bit. Okay, so now we've got 88 results. We're displaying the first 20 of them. If I want to navigate to the next page, I can zip down to the bottom. Ta-da, and then use the pagination. So I'm going to go to the next page. Here I am back at the top. I can scroll down to the bottom. Oh, no, wait a minute. I want to go back to the first page. Okay, so I can navigate. And it's logical to go to the bottom of the page in order to move back and forth, but it's not always practical. What we've done here is we've managed to clone the same information that you see at the bottom of the page up here at the top. So that way you can navigate back and forth between different pages a little more quickly and easily. A lot of the reason why I'm really keen on presenting this information for potential enhancement requests is that in order to do much of what you're seeing behind the scenes, we've had to do some kludgy stuff, right? What actually puts, and this is an example, what actually puts this pagination navigation bar up at the top is a software call that just constantly says, are you ready? 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 And then when it finally gets a signal back saying, okay, we finished loading everything else, it'll grab that element from the bottom of the page, clone it, and put it up at the top. We do this because we don't have access to all the cool stuff that's happening behind the scenes with Bibliovation. We have to sort of wait for that information to finish loading before we can put our stuff in place of it, or in this case, in addition to it. All right. Next. So we've done page navigation. Oh, this is, okay, so I mentioned before that we've varied the way that some information displays based on the kind of record that you're looking at. And one of them, a good example of this, is the continuing resources, or serial records, are displayed differently in the search results from others. So let me do, I'm going to do a new search here. I'm going to do jazz. That's way too much. I'll tell you what, let me use the facets here. And we'll narrow it down to periodicals. All right, that's a little bit better. Okay, so notice here, this is almost invisible until you really need to find the information, all right? So we're looking at, jazz, some brief bibliographic information up in top, including letting you know that it's a periodical. And then you go to this small table here, this little chart of what we got. So it gives a location, it gives a call number, it says what the collection is, and it says, and it gives the summary of holdings that it gets from the 866 from the Muffhead. Now, what you didn't notice is that it's different. So these are periodicals. Number 3 is a periodical for jazz improv. Number 4 is not. It's format of CD. It's a sound recording. And this table is different. So we still have the location to tell people where it is. We still have the call number to focus in on where it is on the shelf. But instead, we have the format of what it is, because we had multiple formats for this, and the status of available, unavailable. We didn't really feel as though availability was key in talking about our periodicals because, except for rare exceptions, they never circulate. They're always going to be on the shelf. So we left that information out. And again, so what happens behind the scenes is we check to see what format is this bibliographic record. Does it have a holdings statement? And if it does, then we change the way that it displays in the search results. I also want to point out one other nifty little wrinkle that we put in here. If there are more than 5 search results that, more than 5 items attached to any one bibliographic record on the search results, we have a little thing that does display more. So I'm going to click on that, and now you can see the rest of it. We found that sometimes there's a little bit too much scrolling, this gets a little bit too much clutter, so we threw this in. All right, back to this. I am, gosh, let me see, we're about, what, 20 minutes in? Does anybody have any questions? Oh, Ann does. Oh, okay. Anne asks, the display more feature is really helpful. Can you sort by volume number? Not yet. We're actually working on that behind the scenes to try and figure out a way to get volume numbers and maybe volume numbers and then copy numbers to sort correctly, but it's really difficult to do because the information that we put into volume in addition to a number is not consistent. Right, so we might have V period, we might have bund, we might have book number, we might have whatever else. There's another question. For serials, is a change to display versus other items done with a customized report, or are you searching by item type and then specifying the fields you want to show in production? This is a great question. So I mentioned APIs before. Basically, what that is, imagine that you can formulate a URL for a browser that would just return a bunch of heading information and then the variable information that's associated with that header, right? So imagine that you do a search for a bunch of bibliographic records. What you get back is a bunch of things that say title and then colon and then the name of the title. And then it just repeats for every single thing that came up in that search. That's basically what these API calls are for. And we can also do them with item record information as well. So what's happening behind the scenes is rather than running any sort of customized report to prep this information for the next time somebody searches, we do it live. And we do it using the API. We grab that information, we repopulate that table. I should also point out, in the process of repopulating these tables, we've done some concatenation. So right here, we've got Mortenson Library bound periodicals. That's actually 2 different columns in out-of-the-box bibliovation, right? So we've got one column that says the name of the library. We've got a second column that says where in the library this thing lives. We decided to take the where does this live and attach it to what library is it in. So now it just says all together Mortenson Library bound periodicals. And we've done the same thing with call number as well, where we have the first part is a call number, the second part is the volume number information. I think we're doing the same thing for copy number. Yeah, and it's a great way of shortening up the display. We do that in the bib details page as well. Let me go back up to the top. Is this a good one? No, it's not a good one. Oh, that works. Okay. So here's bib details. You can see where all the information is divided out into boxes within this table. I'm going to take a look at, oh, why not jazz inside? So we've tightened up the display a little bit more. Don't mind the colors. We're thinking about revising that. We've reclaimed an awful lot of real estate. This isn't necessarily a fair comparison because what hasn't been done in the admin settings for this version of the Waldo sandbox is to determine, okay, these are the items that I want to display and this is the order that I want them to display in. Still, it's another opportunity to reorganize the information and put it in a more cohesive sense. Oh, good. All right. Now that I've gotten off script, next page. Ooh, facets. I can't wait to show you this one. All right, so this is what we've done with the facets feature. Let me get back to my notes. So I'm going to let me do my jazz search again. And I'll do the same thing over here. All right, so our facets bar is, it looks different, it's just colors. There are a couple of small differences between it. We weren't worried about the dashes whenever we just changed them into triangles. So now when you click on that, the triangle points up, you change it again, click it down, the triangle goes down. The big thing that I wanted to show you is, I can still pick any one particular facets from this. So I'll pick periodicals. It uses that as a quick limiter for jazz to just do format periodicals. I could still click that, turn it off. But what I can do instead is this show more button, which is a little different from what we've got here is the more, right? So I click on this more for format. I get a nice list of additional options here. So if I wanted to pick serials, this is where I would do it because it's the list on the facets bar on the side is too short to include things like serials. So I can click on that and then narrow it down to just the serials record. So there's my two. What we've done on our side is when you click show more, again, you get another little box that pops up. You get the list of options that you can do, but you can pick more than one, right? So I'm interested in jazz CDs and LPs. Do I want DVDs, audio cassettes? No, I'm going to skip those for now. And then I'm going to click update. What this does is it grabs those two facets and creates an OR for them there. So now what I'm doing is I'm limiting my search results to things that are either an audio CD or an LP. In order to do that, I'm not sure I can find a great, oh no, in order to do that with Bibliovation standard, I would have to go into advanced search and then create a compound search. So it could still be done, but it can't really be done with the facets bar. Yes, Stephen, we still have cassettes. Did you see Guardians of the Galaxy? That soundtrack was released on cassette. Just saying. All right. So we can still I can still unclick this and bring that up. There's one other really cool thing that we built into this. Okay, so I'm going to redo my search because to include Ella Fitzgerald, because it's Ella Fitzgerald. And then what I'm going to do is, let me see if I can limit it by author. So I'm going to click show more. And then I don't know if you can see this, but we've got the great Ella Fitzgerald here and here. And it's because when this information was pushed into the search tables for solar, it grabs whatever happens to be associated within that particular subfield, right? So unfortunately, we have some that say Ella Fitzgerald and then gives more information next to it, so it doesn't have a period after it. And then we have some that just say Ella Fitzgerald with a period on it. So I could pick both of these as long as I can see that they're both there. What we did is we told the functionality to go ahead and take a look at what I'm selecting. And if there just happens to be another heading in here that's similar to it, that also gets checked off. So now what I've done is, in selecting Ella Fitzgerald, I've also got an Ella Fitzgerald period. So I can update. And there it is. So now I've limited the Jazz Ella stuff to things with author Ella Fitzgerald and Ella Fitzgerald. I don't know. Does that make sense? Nobody said no. Excellent. I'm winning. Okay. Where are we now? Oh, the date facet box. Oh gosh, I love this part too. All right, so let's. I'm going to scroll down here. So here's the publication date limiter, right? Let's take a look at the same one here. So we've got publication date limiter. My apologies to our friends over at LibLine. I used some earlier information when talking about the pre-population of dates within the publication boxes here, because the first go around, there was just a sort of like, well, what's the oldest possible date we could possibly have in here? Let's put that date in here now. What we're actually seeing now is actually the earliest publication date of 1930 from this results list. We decided that we wanted to do something similar, but again, because we have to rely on having the data already delivered to us before we can do anything on our end with it, we put in what's called a trigger, right? And the trigger for this one is clicking within one of these boxes. So it says click for dates. I click. It grabs all the dates from the search results range and pre-populates those boxes. So now it actually says 1956 is the earliest one, and then we've got stuff all the way up to 2017. I can still use a slider to change the date on this. We retained the ability, this really cool functionality, to limit facets just by decade range. And again, I click apply. It limits by the dates that I have set, and we have another facet in place. Cool. I just love that feature. I think it's, well, all right. Anyways, so virtual shelf browse. This is, when we first got the virtual shelf browse feature, we didn't really like it, except for a couple of our catalogers who really enjoyed the ability of seeing where the call number they were assigning would fit in with the rest of the things on the shelf. So let's go back to, let's do, why not twist hard again. And I'll do that same search over on this side. And then what do I want to pick? We'll use, let's use, oh no, wait a minute. I know what record I want to use. Oh no, we'll use that one. Okay, so Oliver Twist, Whole Heart and Soul. And Oliver Twist, Whole Heart and Soul. And over here we have, oh, that's right, this one's checked out. So we don't actually have the option to browse the shelf because it's not here. Let me pick the next one for this. Okay, now we can view nearby items on the shelf. And here's the display. We've got pictures of the book jackets. When you hover over them, you can get a little bit more information on that, and you can scroll back and forth for more information. we decided, again, we're not really wild about these pop-up boxes. So for this, we decided that we'd rather just have the information show up at the top of the screen. So what it does is it slides all the other information down to show you, a little focus pane on the pages. We decided to skip over the dust jacket illustrations on this. The reason why is because in an academic library, yes, there are some things that do have cover images associated with the books, but the vast majority of our collection does not. The other thing is, looking at this, you can see most of the bibliographic information and author information right there without having to mouse over it. Now, there are some instances where, we just couldn't fit in enough information. We've got these little dots, and when you hover over those, it expands so you can see the rest of it. And again, with this, you can still scroll back and forth. We load 10 records rather than, how many are we doing here? 5 at a time. And in order to create this nearly infinite back and forth scroll, we set up these buttons that will grab, again, via API, additional information, add it to the pile that's already there. So now instead of seeing 10 records, now you're looking at 20. And then I click again. Oh, no, wait, not 20, 15. And then I click again, it's going to be 20 because we're adding 5 onto either end. And you can still scroll back and forth along the entire list. If you like the colors, they're randomly generated. You're welcome. All right, so let's do, where are we? I'll go back to my list, virtual shelves. Oh, thank you very much. There's a comment here from Clay. Oh my gosh, thank you, Clay. Compliment us on what we've done on with API information. I have to say that the API information has been absolutely phenomenal. It has revolutionized how we look up information and display it in our version of the discovery layer. And like, if you have any more information about these APIs, when we first started using them, it was because we had sort of accidentally stumbled across one, and then said, okay, what else can we do with this? And then we went and we found some more APIs that we could do, and then we find out that there are conditionals that we can apply to these APIs. So it's been great. Like the more you can put into API format, the happier we'll be. What else have we got? So I'm going to hide this. Oh, cascading search. Okay, so for this, let me do another search because I'm going to bring up my favorite test record, which is this one. One of the few works of fiction that we have, well, not fiction, but leisure that we have in our collection. Twisted. What we've done here is, and I'm going to bring up the same record, I think the same record here. You do have it, good. Okay. So we're looking at the same information. On the right-hand side is the straight out of the box Bibliovation. On the left-hand side is the Hartford stuff. Here, if I want to, let's show 6 more. Okay. If I want to see more information about police, so we've got police, California, Los Angeles fiction. And over here we've got police, California, Los Angeles fiction. If I click on this heading here on this side, it'll grab that authority record number and then do a search based on that. You can see it up here in the URL, right? So it's MMM and then 87489 to correspond with the authority record that triggers that. And so it brings up 2 results for more fiction on detective stuff, right? What we've done here, and this is something we've actually had in place for quite some time, is we have this cascading heading search. So what I can do is I can hover over this first part, which says police, And if I click now, I'm going to do a search for a subject of police within the collection. I can also hover over California and do a phrase search for police California. And again, stop me if you've heard this before, I hover over Los Angeles and do a phrase search on police California, Los Angeles, or all the way out to police California, Los Angeles fiction. Let's just do police in California. So here's 27 results. Most of which are fiction. Do we have some other ones now? Oh, Vertigo, I like that movie. But this is a good example that we have of this sort of cascading search headings. If I want to learn more about police women that are not fiction, I can click on that. Women in law enforcement. If I want to do research on Los Angeles, California, rather than just fiction of Los Angeles, California, that's fine too. So, well, thank you, Sierra. What is the last? Well, the last one is, I think, the coolest one of all, but I've had the hardest time trying to get people to say, yeah, that's definitely something I want in my collection. Years ago, we set up a mapping feature within our software that had one image for every location that we wanted to map for an image. I mean, for retrieval, right? So if I wanted to find stuff that was in, you know, broad range of education, I would go to, I'd had a map for the LA section of Library of Congress call number classification, and there was a picture of that floor of the library with that one particular section highlighted within the shelving. And it was literally hundreds of maps to maintain, and anytime we did shifting, it was a nightmare because I had to go in and change these maps. The other thing that happened is we had a logo at the top of every single one of these maps, and our our logo changed. So I had a couple of student assistants that had to go through and, well, edit every single one of those images. Anyways, what we did is we redesigned that. So now when I click on map, it's using 4 images, one for each level of the Harrison libraries, and then a focused one for the Allen Library collection. And I've got some functionality running in conjunction with this that puts a little yellow semi-transparent box over the section that I want people to see. So that's leisure books in this instance. So now, and this works on mobile as well, anytime somebody's looking for a book that gets the detail section, they can click on this map and actually walk up to where the items are. The other thing about this, again, since now I've only got 4 images, I don't have to build in the little yellow shading on every single one of these things. I've got a tool that helps me, Koa and location map editor, that helps me create this. So basically all of this information, these lookup tables, are stored in this HTML chart. And it's easy enough to open up the HTML code. If you've got something that does, you know, WYSIWYG editing, you can do it straight in that box. I don't mind actually looking at HTML code. I just go find what I want to do and change it. So anytime that we're doing shifting, I'll just go to the section that's moved. All right, so the stuff in bound periodicals, maybe the QPs have shifted down to the next section. I'll just change these numbers, save it, and now the image that gets pulled up is the correct one. So, oh, thank you, Anne. There's another part to it that's basically, I'll show it to you anyways, even though it doesn't, no, that's not it, hang on. Oh, there it is, right. So here's the actual editing tool that I use to put little yellow boxes on top of stuff. And it's basically just, you know, I grab a section, I click go, it creates a line of code for me. I copy the line of code, I slap it into this section, and Bob's your uncle. So it's a little more involved, but again, it's not maintaining 400 maps. Have I covered everything? Yes, I have. Questions? All right, do people like the color scheme? Somewhere out there, somebody is on mute who's ranting into the microphone. Okay. Oh, you want me to do the Ella facet again? Oh, okay, sure. All right, so let me do, what did I do? I did Jazz and Ella, right? And then for the facets, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Here's the author section. I'm going to click on Show More. And again, there's only one small difference between these two headings, but they show up twice. So by clicking on Ella Fitzgerald, I also automatically click on Fitzgerald, comma, Ella, period. There's probably another one in here. No, I'm not gonna sort through it. Feel free. This is all in production. So if you want to play around with this some more, you can go to hartford.waldo.coalibrary.com. Stephen already did yesterday. Stephen found a small error that we have in our code that I've passed on to Jim, our absolutely amazing, fantastic programming guy. And he's probably working away in our sandbox right now to try to identify how to fix it. Thank you, Anne. I'm glad you like the colors. Update. I can do another facet search, so I'm going to do this. One thing, so take a look up here at the top where it says refine your format 6 options. We're kind of limited in the construction of the URL. So basically what we're doing is when you pick these different facets, we're creating a new URL string and putting it in. If I picked every single one of these things, I just happen to have 6, and then click update. Oh, it has to be under 6. And click update, I'm going to get a little error message because we can't get it to do that many facets. So we try to look at what reasonable expectation is, and honestly, who looks at VHS tapes? So we can do it like that. It's also better for like these you know, somebody will type in I can't, let me think, like police, and then wants to select, you know, multiple facets. There's just no way of reasonably processing that much information. So the idea is sort of like, well, you're asking for too much. Go back and try to change your search a bit. All right.
Ben, this is Becky.
Oh, hi, Becky.
Hi. Each of the features that you've shown us, are they all in the coding independent of each other, or is there overlap so that in order to do, for example, number 5, you also need number 8?
We would, I'd have to take a look. It is possible to isolate these, but because of the organic nature of the way that we sort of built them, they're not isolated within inside the code. There isn't a neat little section that starts with a comment saying, this is for maps, per se. Actually, I think that one might actually have a neat little section that says, this is for maps. But if you wanted the one that does, say, the formatting for the bib details page as opposed to the formatting for the search results page, that's going to be a little more difficult to tease out. The first one that I tried to do, because when I debuted it, we had such enthusiastic response, was the character normalization for the search box. And I went to Jim and said, okay, quick, give me the code that goes along with this. I'm going to pass it on to some folks. And Jim said, it's not as simple as that. So I still have someplace on my computer a file of most of what that code requires in order to pass it on. But the other thing is that this top bar that you're seeing here, it's rewritten. You know, it looks like what you're seeing over here, but it's not. It's fake. It's a mock-up. The other thing is the work that we've done to make these changes is not the way that it would be done by, say, libline, right? Because again, we had these limitations of we get this information, we manipulate the information once it's finished loading, and then put it back on the screen. The best way of doing this is to set it up behind the scenes so you're getting it straight off the bat. This might be difficult to see. I'm going to try it. I'm going to click on course reserves. I want you to watch your screens very closely. You're going to have about a second and a half worth of opportunity to see this thing, and I want you to watch very closely. Did you see it? What you saw was the original course reserves module loading on this page and then getting replaced with our code. Does it work for us? Yes. Is this the way one should be writing applications? I'll let Clay answer that, but I think the answer is probably no. So, Anne wants all the Hartford enhancements. Yay. Well, why don't we just hire Anne?
I have another question, Ben.
Yes.
In the discovery layer configuration, you don't have all of these changes in the CSS and the JavaScript and everything. You actually go to an external file in order to pick up all of what you want your displays to look like.
That's true. We have we've got a little bit of file space on a web server, and that's where, say, so the web server is called libweb, and this is some ancillary stuff that I tucked in here. This this file is actually actively being used by Cull right now. It's also located on libweb, as is this. It's fairly minor, the amount of information that we have to push out for, and I don't think it's unreasonable to ask any individual institution to find a little bit of web space. Every library has a web page. Everybody has somebody who's managing that web page. It's basically creating another folder, putting a couple of files there, and making sure that they're visible to the outside world.
What kind of effort do you need to make when something new hits the production database? For example, if a point release is added, I know for a full version it takes quite a bit of effort, but for the point releases in particular, what kind of effort do you find yourself making to keep this up to date?
It depends. We will never really know exactly what the impact is going to be. We're not, unfortunately, we're not coordinating with Liblime. We're lone wolves. We're rogue. You can't control us. We're like the wind. Well, it's not quite that bad. But we never really know when one thing that you're going to change is going to completely throw everything else out of whack. So we do have to go in and test and change and so on and so forth. Jim is in our sandbox all the time. He loves playing around with a lot of the different features and trying to come up with new ideas for things. So he'll often notice these problems. But when we know that there is going to be another release that's coming out, we'll sort of stop, go to the sandbox, test all the functionality, make sure that everything is working. And then when the release rolls out, sometimes you don't catch something until it goes live. When we find it, we report it and get it taken care of. There have been some changes that have sort of like done away with our code. So we sort of had to rewrite it from scratch, but that's how it goes. I have to say that LibLime's ability to let us use a sandbox has been incredibly useful, because it's not just going in and familiarizing ourselves with the next batch of features that are coming out. It's also our opportunity to go someplace and just shoot the moon. Let's build a carousel. Let's see what it's going to look like. Let's put a chat client on our main page. What is that going to look like? Let's change the colors in this page and see how people like it. So.
Okay, this question is for everyone who's watching. If you had your choice of, say, 3 of the 12 features that Ben just showed us, could you immediately tell us what those would be? And if you can, just type in the corresponding numbers into the chat, and I'll put together a list of which are the highest ranking ones. I know that a lot of you will say that you want all of them. If you had to limit yourself to 3, if you had to pay for 3, which 3 would you pay for? Yes, they are, Sierra, very definitely.
This is where the fighting breaks out.
Yes.
Steven's not going to back down on course reserves. Oh, that's great to learn, Clay. Thank you very much.
Keep going, Sierra. I have a few more that you can choose from.
When one of the reasons that I am so pumped on course reserves is that a lot of the other features, our patrons may not end up seeing them because they'll be using our discovery layer, our EBSCO discovery service instead. But there's no way to get that for course reserves. So.
True. For those of you who missed it, Clay wanted to point out that there are some features within number 8 that are now native in Bibliovation. So the next thing we'll do is we'll take a look at the Waldo sandbox, see what that's like, and then decide, okay, should we scale back on this, or should we leave our code in place because it does some other stuff?
Okay, we have 4 minutes left for our hour. Do any of you have any questions that you'd like to ask Ben while we still have the opportunity? And if you haven't responded with which features you would like to see as your top 3, you can email them to the Waldo support mailing list, and I'll add them all together into a message so that you can all see where the interest lies.
Thank you, Anne.
Ben, do you have any closing comments that you'd like to make?
No, I mean, thank you all very much for listening. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hey,
and I'm sorry, what?
Look at Patrick's chat. If you wanted to add feature 8, how easy is it to to have somebody, how easy is it for you to send it to them?
I'll see. I'm always in contact with Jim, so I'll send him an email message and ask him how easy it is to get the facet stuff. Ide is specifically, the show more. Well, I've been calling it the more with the or. So I'll see if we can send that off. And also, you want the identical facet selection as well?
Ben, I have one last question.
Okay. Yes.
Have you done any usability testing on this with students or even faculty?
We have done some impromptu stuff. We haven't in years sat down with a group of students and said, hey, here's some pizza. Would you mind doing some searches on this and we'll take some notes? But what has happened is that our public services librarians, of course, of giving instruction, demo these features to their students, and we get some valuable feedback on that. One of the things that actually we need to work on now is with a mapping feature. Let me go back to one of these bib records. So here I am at the top of this page. You have to scroll down to the bottom and then actually read the text to realize that, hey, I can get a map for this. People had originally thought, because we changed the way that this page looks, people had originally thought that the maps had gone away. Well, that's not the case. It's just we're not advertising the same way, because we used to have the maps, over in this corner here as a thumbnail, and then you click on it and pop up. But now we put it down into the items table. What we need to do now is create some sort of advertising further up on the page to let them know that we do have a map. So that's one bit of user feedback. The next thing that we really need to do is make sure that the changes that we've made on the discovery layer are compliant with ADA guidelines for accessibility.
Okay, let me see what Tracy says here. Okay. Do you have a group of librarians that meet on a regular basis to analyze the look of the page and then make suggestions? Or is it all just sort of, if there's a suggestion, someone tells you and then you see if it's feasible?
For feedback on this, we actually, we don't meet every single week, but we have a placeholder every single week to talk about what we're working on, and then talk about frustrations and things that we feel as though could work better. And so that's how we gather an awful lot of feedback from staff, which of course they get it from students as well. And
Sure.
All right, so I'm talking to a bunch of librarians right now. You're experts in trying to find information, and you know how difficult it can be to find just the right information out of, say, 150,000, 250,000, 500,000 records. And a lot of times I think to myself, well, we can't make it easy, but we can make it easier. The map functionality for staff only. Sierra, you raise a good point. I have not done any customization work on the staff side. And that's because I would like to have that be consistently available throughout. So when a DL feature breaks, we can work on it as quickly as possible and get it fixed, but you can still do your cataloging and circulation on the other side as well. So I've been very hands-off as far as staff side is concerned. Jim has run into problems, not so much in the past, but not so much currently, but certainly in the past, where the changes that he wanted to identify just for the general public, just for the DL, were leaking through to the staff side as well. So it can be difficult to do stuff just for staff as opposed to just for the public or just for everybody or for everybody, but it is doable.
One last question, Ben, and then I think we better close it off. And I'll ask that question. How many people are working on the coding side for you?
Okay, so I'm going to give you a range of numbers, and
Okay.
it's between 2, which would be me and Jim, and everyone. And I'm going to lean towards everyone. As Tracy keeps pointing out, our users group includes all of our staff. So everybody is invited to come to the meetings. Everybody is invited to send me comments and emails, and certainly to review the changes that we're making.
Okay, but the coding piece itself, is that just basically Jim doing the work? Or...
Yeah, that's Jim doing the work with me helping and guiding.
Okay. And is Jim full-time? No,
Jim is not. Jim is in the office less than 20 hours a week, actually closer to 10 or 15 most of the time. Jim loves working from home and looking at things, but when he's in the office, it's him and I working very closely. Jim knows a lot about JavaScript. He's learned an awful lot about API calls, and he, over the course of the years, has learned just about everything about Mark, because they don't teach Mark language to software developers.
That's true. Okay. Does anybody else have any last parting comments or thoughts?
Welcome, Ann.
Okay, thank you all. We'll meet again next on December 5th, same time, same URL. See you all then. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Becky. Bye-bye.
You're welcome, Ben. Thank you.